Hello. Are you feeling anxious or worried or stressed in relation to COVID-19? Well, if the answer is yes, then your feelings are completely valid, they're normal, and they are very real. And many of us will be feeling this way. So, as I'm a solution-focused psychotherapist and clinical hypnotherapist, I wanted to take you through the brain science of why many of us will be feeling this way, but also the solutions for what we can do to make ourselves feel just a little bit better during this time. So, I do this with all my clients, and I always apologise for my drawing. I was never very good in art. But I'm going to take you through the brain. So, first of all, let's have a look at the brain. And let's have a look at the left prefrontal cortex. So this is the logical part of our brain. It is the solution-focused part of the brain. It's the more positive part of the brain. It makes a proper assessment of the situation, and it's attached to a vast intellectual consciousness, the intellectual mind. Now, this part of the brain is the only part of the brain that we don't share with any other animals. So that's why we don't see cats singing into microphones or dogs driving a car. Now, if our brain senses there's a threat or emergency, we lose intellectual control and we slip into a different part of the brain. It's often referred to the primitive part of the brain. So, threat being the coronavirus. Now, primitive part of the brain, the three parts I want to discuss today. So we've got the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, freeze part of the brain. And then we've got the hippocampus, which is where our kind of primitive behavioural responses are stored. And then we've got the hypothalamus, which regulates chemical responses in the mind and the body. So, our brain senses there's a threat. We lose intellectual control, we slip into the primitive brain. Now, if our brain senses that we're in a crisis or emergency, for example, the coronavirus, then anger, anxiety, and depression kick in as primitive opt-out clauses to support us. Anger, anxiety, depression are actually great for when we were cavemen, but not so good for living our life day to day. Now, there's more about this primitive brain. Again, this brain is perfect for when we were early man, but it actually hasn't, and woman, but it hasn't actually developed much from when we were cavemen. So this part of the brain is generally more negative. It will see things from the worst possible perspective. So I've spoken to a lot of people who are immediately jumping to the worst case scenario for what will happen during isolation, for example. It's not a logical part of the brain. So it's kind of a more every man for himself mentality, and that's why we're seeing crazy things happen with, loo roll stockpiling, etc. We are more likely to want to blame others when we're operating from this part of the brain, and I've seen people become quite confrontational in stores and be quite mean-spirited, unfortunately. Which brings me on to anger. So anger, anxiety, depression, primitive opt-out clauses. Anger is a way of increasing our strength to defend ourselves against other wild animals and tribesmen. In terms of feeling more on red alert, so when we are from this primitive part of the brain, we're on more red alert. So I spoke to a friend today who said she has that feeling of the heart palpitations and on edge. You tend to feel more on the edge of your seat, on red alert. We're more obsessional, so it's very likely that we will keep thinking about corona. We'll be having a conversation with someone else and we'll keep reverting back to it. Finally, when we are operating from this part of the brain, so the primitive part of our brain, we struggle to tell the difference between imagination and reality. So if we are thinking about all the worst case scenarios and going over in our head all the things that could go wrong and the things that might happen, it can be really, really damaging for our mental health. Now, if we are already feeling quite anxious and in general, and we've got a full stress bucket, and when I say full stress bucket, when I talk about the stress bucket, it's a metaphorical stress bucket, but we tend to fill up our stress buckets by negatively forecasting, strange bucket, told you I wasn't good at drawing. We tend to fill up our stress bucket by negatively forecasting what could happen. So, I'm going to lose my job, this is going to go on for ages, we're all going to get it and we're all going to be having a terrible time. And we start negatively forecasting what could happen. But also through negatively introspecting about the past, so thinking about what has happened. So if in general your stress bucket is quite full, your stresses and your worries about the coronavirus are going to be exacerbated. So how can we help ourselves get back into the logical part of our brain, the part of the brain that we want to be operating in, to help us deal with these difficult times ahead? Also, stress can have a massive impact on our immune system, so we want to be as strong as possible. So this is why I'm going to give some tips for how to get back into here and out of here. So now is a great time to explore online therapy. So have a little Google, see what works for you. Online yoga, online meditation. It's a great time to set some time aside for your mental health. It's a good idea to practice social distancing where possible. We know that this helps to slow down the virus by giving people time to recover, thus not continuing to spread the virus. However, I urge you to not stop interacting with others, because interactions with others is incredibly important for your mental health. So get those FaceTime group chats booked in, text your friends, have that long phone call with a family member. Maybe you've got some more time working from home so you can afford to do that more. Actually schedule these in. That reminds me, write what's been good. So push yourself to write 5 what's been goods. We can rewire our brain. The more we think in a positive way, the more we function in that way, and the more we create new neural pathways. So I challenge you in your diary, in your phone, to write each day at the moment 5 what has been goods for you. And that brings me on to social media now. So with social media, you can actually mute your WhatsApp chats or your Facebook updates from certain people if you find that things are pinging up on your phone that are making you feel more anxious. You can mute those chats, and the great thing is people don't know that you're doing it, so you can mute your chats on WhatsApp and the group won't even know, and it allows you to then go back into the chat and choose when you're reading this material rather than being bombarded with it. I would recommend also limiting your consumption of media when it comes to COVID-19. And if you're looking for updates, stick to the more factual websites. So not the ones that are trying to scaremonger and make a good headline. Reduce your risk. So reduce your risk, do useful things to reduce the risk of spreading the virus. So wash your hands more. Eat more healthily, get as much sleep as you can, and if you don't feel well, do stay at home. Don't feel guilty for saying I'm going to stay at home. Keep up your exercise. So I have recently discovered online workout videos are not what I used to watch, for example Mr. Motivator. I really am enjoying The Body Coach, so Joe Wicks, and my mum actually informed me the other day she's been following my friend London_fitness_guy, who she says is great, so give him a follow as well. It's okay to tell people that you're not wanting to discuss corona. They're not going to get offended. So you remember you're in control of what you actually talk about. If you're planning on working from home, try and add a little bit of routine into each day. So make a plan for yourself. Routine is good. Get outside for some fresh air. I will be walking Poppy and Percy this lunchtime alone, away from people. But fresh air does make a difference, even if it's just a 10-minute power walk around the block. And finally, send me a message if you fancy booking a complimentary initial consultation. And if you guys have any other tips for things that help you to feel more in control during this time, then send me a message and I will post anonymously on my page. Thank you. Bye.